It's got some momentum, so you've got to amend it. So everything else should be the same as was before.
You can't leave me sat on my own. You can't leave me sat on my own.
No. I'm with the
Of
mate.
course you are, sorry. There we go, Winston.
Thanks.
We'll find you
I've got a
something.
little rugby. How are you? That's a begin. Sorry. Hi there. How are you? Okay. Training session. This is the main course.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, members, and to all the members of the public who've graced us with their presence tonight. Thank you. Can I ask, I'd just like to introduce myself as Councillor Mike Warren, Chairman of the Licensing Committee, and I will be chairing the meeting today. Can I ask the Services Officer, Mr Woods, to read out the apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for that. Microphone just loading. Apologies have been received from Councillor Lizzie Bowen, Councillor Janice Duffy, Councillor Terry Guildford and Councillor Brian Sargent. No other apologies have been noted. Thank you, Chair.
Do we have any apologies from any of the members? No? Okay, thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest from members and officers. Do any members or officers have any declarations of interest in any of the items under consideration for tonight's meeting?
None, Chair.
Thank you. Item 3. In the committee, are the committee happy to confirm the minutes of the meeting on the 3rd of October 23?
Agreed.
Thank you. Chairman's announcements. Members of the public are permitted to film, broadcast and report on the meeting, subject to the efficiency running of the meeting and not being effective. Only those people who have registered, and we have one member tonight that will be addressing us tonight. Members of the public, can I please stress you are requested not to call out during the committee discussions on any item or anybody who disrupts the conduct of the meeting will be given a warning, and if they continue to disrupt the meeting, they will be asked to leave. Can I please stress that you're not allowed to interrupt the meeting tonight? Thank you. This meeting is being webcast to the Council's corporate YouTube channel. Therefore, could all those speaking please utilise their microphones when doing so for the benefit of those watching online and in the overspill room downstairs. There are no planned fire drills, so the alarm, should it go off, Please sound the evacuation instructions will be given by the officers. Please ensure that all devices are switched off or to the silent. Thank you. Request to address the meeting, item 5. Only speakers who did not address the committee in relation to the draft policy at last October's meeting are permitted to register to speak tonight. We have received one such request to address the meeting from Mr. Matthew Francis on behalf of the Taxi Business Information Desk. Mr. Francis. Yes, please. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Yeah, no worries. What do you want me to press on the
Yes.
microphone?
It's just the central button.
This one, yeah?
The lights
Little red light comes on.
Yeah, the little red lights are on. I think you can hear me.
closer, sorry.
Yeah, there we go.
To here.
Don't worry, I won't take any longer than 3 minutes, maybe 3 minutes 10.
That's fine. Thank
Okay, do you want me to go ahead?
you. Yes, please.
Okay. I'm the Director of the Taxi Business Information Desk. We assist hackney carriage and private hire drivers with the licensing aspects of their ops, including licence revocations, refusals, DBS issues, passenger complaints and licensing investigations. We do this free of charge. I'm personally a hackney carriage driver and have been for 4.5 years, taking nearly 18,000 fares in that time. Having read the entire new policy, we find it to be drafted well. It is detailed and comprehensive. However, we have 2 concerns regarding it. Page 70, paragraphs 135, 136, and page 75, paragraphs 176, 177, which is assistance to disabled passengers. We are concerned that some essential information has been missed within these parts of the policy, which could cause injustice to both drivers and disabled passengers. It includes the requirements under section 164A5 of the Equality Act 2010 in relation to what is expected of drivers of hacks and private hire vehicles. These are non-designated. To carry passengers, to carry the wheelchair, and if the passenger has with them mobility aids, to carry the mobility aids, and to give passengers mobility assistance as is reasonably required. Firstly, you licence many types of vehicles as hacks and private hire. Most of these vehicles will not be able to carry a person in a wheelchair, nor will they be able to carry a wheelchair in its usable state. Some will of course be able to carry folded wheelchairs, but again not all will. Again, this applies to mobility aids, some capable of carrying them, some not. Under these circumstances, however, which is not included in the policy, drivers will be exempt from having to carry them as a matter of statute, as provided by section 164A12, as it would not be safe to carry the wheelchair or mobility aids in the vehicle, nor would it be reasonable. So that's one exemption that's missed. Secondly, hackney and private hire drivers are on occasion confronted with passengers who are intoxicated, aggressive, violent and extremely rude. You have stated within the document that taxi drivers have the duty to carry those passengers. They do not. You have not included that the driver will be exempt in these circumstances as detailed in section 164A brackets 8 brackets B. Thirdly, there is a further matter in that if the driver does not know, taking into account all the circumstances, that the passenger requires mobility assistance, they are again exempt from having to provide it as detailed by 164A brackets 13. For example, if the disability is not visible and the driver is not informed. All of these exemptions are not required to be authorised by Northamptonshire. They are statutory exemptions for all taxi drivers. It is our view that the above information should be included within the policy to assist both disabled passengers and drivers and prevent injustice. The second concern is animals in hacks and private hire vehicles, page 166, paragraph 109. Within this part of the document, it makes it very clear that only animals belonging to passengers can be carried in hacks and PHVs. Drivers use their licensed hacks and PHVs for personal use, and some drivers have family pets or relatives or friends with pets. It is a concern that they will not be permitted to transport these animals, but can transport animals belonging to passengers. It is our view this is unfair to drivers and the policy should be changed to allow them to carry their own animals, as such a requirement on drivers will contravene Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights. Lastly, 2 points, and I know I've got maybe 30 seconds. On a side note generally, having read the points policy that seems to be an emotive point within this document, the points policy is well researched and is an excellent way to make sure that standards are adhered to. Only 24 points in 3 years, 24 points in 3 years is very lenient by the council and very reasonable. 24 points in 3 years, it's a very good points policy. Lastly, there is a clause within page 53 paragraph 9, with regards to social media use being taken into account when deciding on the fit and proper status of a taxi driver. This will have to be proportionate and should only relate to matters that impact on the driver's role as a taxi driver. It is not a way to curtail political opinions, religious views in any way. It has to be in relation to the role as a taxi driver. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No worries.
Item 6. Members will note that a series of proposed amendments suggested by members of the committee have been circulated ahead of the meeting. We will discuss and debate these proposals once the officers have presented their report. Can I hand over to licensing officers, please?
Yes, good evening everyone. I'm presenting the report as in respect of the changes from the original report and just running through presentation, summarising the key points. The recommendations of the report, and just to clarify, are that for the approval of the draft policy and associated appendices after considering the responses received during the consultation period, and the delegation of the authority to the Assistant Director of Regulatory Services in consultation with the Chair of Committee to make minor and consequential amendments to the policy once it is made and if required by law. So this indicates that the policy is not set in stone. It is a fluid document that can be amended and can be clarified as time permits. Sorry, just making sure that the mic is actually picking up. Just to clarify the background situation, the aim of the policy is to ensure that all who use taxis in West Northants have safe, reliable and pleasant experience, recognising that taxis are a key part of the public transport provision used by a large number of residents, visitors and businesses across the area. Recognition that passengers may be vulnerable for many reasons and that therefore the highest standards of safeguarding are required. There is a need to have a unified, clear and consistent policy that applies across the area, following the move from the sovereign authorities to West Northamptonshire Council. We currently have existing policies from the sovereign authorities. These need to be brought together into a single policy, and that is the aim of what we're looking to do. And the new policy considers the recommendation of the Department of Transport Best Practice Guidance for Licensing Authorities in England, the Department of Transport Statutory Taxi and Private Hire Standards, and the Institute of Licensing Guidance on determining the suitability of applicants and licensees. To summarise the actions that have been taken to date, prior to the development of the draft policy, there was extensive engagement with the taxi trade during November and December 2022. The policy was approved for consultation at the meeting of the Licensing Committee on the 24th of January 2023, and the consultation opened on the 30th of January and was extended and continued until the 23rd of April. During this period, everyone had an opportunity to respond to the consultation and make representations. A total of 305 responses were received to the consultation. Of these, 103 were complete, and these are outlined in Appendix B to the report, and that is the appendix that is in the large copy that is now more legible than it was at the original meeting, to enable clearer reading of that document. The summary of the responses, together with officer recommendations and officer comments, are contained in Appendix C, which I shall run through in a moment. And just to clarify that at the meeting on the 3rd of October, the decision was deferred to allow additional time for members to consider the consultation responses and their implications prior to the decisions being made, and to allow officers to incorporate suggested practical amendments within the draft of the policy prior to further consideration. And the provision of that Appendix C is that clarification there. Hopefully this will work. and this is a reproduction of the information which is in Appendix C. And if I can run through that point by point, and I may need to seek some clarification from my colleagues and the licensing team in respect of points there. In terms of the penalty points and terms of drivers and operators, and the comment is that that penalty point system is seen as an open and transparent way of dealing with breaches of policy, legislation and conditions. It's a guide for officers and for licence holders, but ultimately each case will be dealt with on its own merits, and there will be a right of appeal in terms of any imposition of points. The point in respect of the specific point raised on consultation in respect of the penalty points with regard to the dress code, office concerns were raised as what would constitute offensive, and it was explained that someone not liking what was being worn wouldn't be considered to be offensive, but clothing that contained, for example, swear words, hate speech or graphic images would, and that consideration would be given. The point in respect of the penalty points and the no smoking signs, the current requirement is that 3 no smoking signs are displayed. There is flexibility that this can be amended to the standard legal requirement of 1 clearly visible sign. The convictions policy is in line with the Institute of Acoustics convictions policy, which was published in April, within the guidance in April 2018. This document was produced by a working party commissioned by the Institute of Licensing in recognition of the absence of any recent statutory or ministerial guidance. Decision-making across the country was inconsistent, leading to licence shopping around where licence holders who are refused a licence in one place will try and gain a licence in another location. The intention of the Institute of Licensing's guidance is to provide licensing authorities with a national set of standards that they can consider as a basis for their own local policy, and in doing so provide a more consistent approach across the country. This guidance was produced in partnership with the Local Government Association, the National Association of Licensing and Enforcement Officers and lawyers in the Local Government Association. Moving on. The 1-year period of licence and driver renewal period. The 1-year period of renewal is it requires additional testing at specified intervals during that licence period, but it will be a yearly licence there. And the 40-day renewal window is considered to be a reasonable period for the applicant to declare any matters that require further investigation before a licence is renewed. This could, for example, include arrests, motoring offences and other actions which do not appear on a DBS. The Council will accept a DBS medical that is dated within that 3-month window at the time of a renewal application. In respect of the Certificate of Good Conduct, we recognise that this has given cause for concern, and the proposed policy of 3 period of 3 months follows recommended government guidance. However, it is recognised that some other local authorities have adopted a 6-month approach to allow for the higher number of the trade that travel abroad more frequently, and this is ultimately for members to make a decision as to the preferred time period there. In respect of the Group 1 medical process, the current requirement is that medicals are carried out by GPs with access to full medical history. Over 100 local authorities allow summary records to be used, and again it is for members to make that decision on the best approach. Driver licences and badges and concerns expressed about drivers safely displaying badges and bogus drivers replicating them. The identification of drivers is considered to be important information for passengers to report any issues to the licensing team. And so that is important that those badges are displayed. Medical exemption in respect of assistance dogs is ultimately a legal requirement for all assistance dogs to be carried unless the driver has a specified medical exemption from their GP. The banning of food and drinking vehicles can be amended to show this is down to driver's discretion, and that is non-critical. The provision of approved garages and testing stations. The current provision is that there are 3 operating models in the sovereign area. The Northampton area used 2 approved contracted testing stations with officer checks carried out on a spot check basis. In Daventry, 1 approved contracting station is used, and again licensing officers carry out checks. And in the southern area, the acceptance of an MOT from any garage along with service history in addition to licensing officer checked. Having reviewed the comments regarding testing stations and vehicle history, the proposal is to move to the Northampton model and procure a contract for testing stations across the area, backed up by officer testing. And the point in respect of vehicle service history is wrapped up with that as well. The queries in respect of the emissions policy. The emissions policy is aimed at assisting meeting the Council's corporate objective of cleaner, greener, and communities have previously been, cleaner, greener communities, and this has previously been in place in the Northampton area and is an important part of the Northampton Air Quality Strategy and the Council's sustainability strategy. An area where change has already been suggested is in respect of the vehicle specification in respect of tinted glass. The policy has been amended to conform with the National Department of Transport standards here. The vehicle specification in respect of side opening windows and seat width. The requirement here is for vehicle specification to consider public safety and passenger comfort. It's considered reasonable that existing licensed vehicles are granted grandfather rights until the purchase of a new vehicle is necessary. The licensing team will continue to review whether amendments to vehicle specification should be changed in the light of any developments in makes and models of vehicles, but there is flexibility on this. Vehicle specification requiring private hire vehicles maximum 4 passengers, reducing the Toyota Prius from 6 to 4 seats. Review of vehicle types that are suitable to be licensed as private hire vehicle needs to be undertaken, and a transitional period will allow for current vehicle proprietors to adopt any required changes. Existing licensed vehicle will be continue to be renewed until they're replaced or until they no longer meet the emissions standard. Again, flexibility there. The issue of signage and roof. I'm obviously talking too much. So I can continue. Yeah. I'll quickly before it runs out, yes. The existing issue of vehicle signage and roof and door or roof signs or magnetic door signs. Signage in other neighbouring authority is mostly door signage with no roof signage. Consistency is absolutely key in raising educational awareness around the difference between hackneys and private hire vehicles, and members will need to decide whether they require what type of signage they require for private hire vehicles. Ideally, any signage will make it clear that the vehicle is licensed by West Northants Council. The use of the word taxi for private hire operators. It is accepted that with the advancement of technology and high volume of bookings being undertaken online and via apps, that the word taxi is an accepted layman's term for members of the public when used online to make a booking for a private hire operator. The word taxi should not be permitted on actual private hire vehicles to differentiate between them and hackney carriages which can be hailed and picked up at ranks without a booking. Those private hire vehicles must be booked. And the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act clearly identifies this, and that a vehicle cannot be licensed as a private hire vehicle unless the licensing authority is satisfied that the vehicle is not of such design or appearance to lead members of the public to believe that it is a hackney carriage. The Transport Act 1980, Section 64, also prohibits the word taxi from being displayed on or above the roof of a private hire vehicle, although there is no legislation that prohibits the word taxi from being displayed anywhere else on a vehicle. The issue around driver working hours, in light of the comments that have been received, we've decided that this would be difficult to monitor by licensing officers. Clearly, HGV, PHVs unlike HGVs, private hire vehicles and hackney carriages are not fitted with tachographs, and so the enforcement of working hours would be a matter of trust, and so it is recommended that that section is now removed. In respect of driver safety, we would like to reassure that the licensing committee engage frequently with the council's community safety team and Northamptonshire Police to communicate safety messages where areas of concern are highlighted. Actions have also been taken in respect of the provision of enhanced lighting on taxi ranks, the provision of taxi marshals, and investigations will be continuing as regards to other measures that can be put in place to ensure safety for all in the nighttime economy. Comments raised in respect of the Competition Commissioner. There are no identified risks of breaching any competition guidance, and information there is contained on that reference at .gov. The suggestion of adoption of training instead of points. The policy does not restrict the opportunity to offer training in circumstances where it may be an alternative option. It will be considered on a case-by-case basis, and on many cases, training would be the appropriate sanction. The chauffeur exemption. A chauffeur exemption can be included with the policy, and such a suitably worded draft for such an exemption is shown at Appendix C. Those are the points that have, or the summary of the key points that were raised within the consultation. So moving on with the remainder of the presentation, just to clarify a few issues and then hopefully allow and progress to discussions of the points contained within the policy. So to provide clarification around the points-based system. Points system allows for minor breaches of conditions to be recorded and considered in context. They provide for greater consistency in enforcement. They ensure that each case is dealt with on its own merits, and they are very separate from any DVLA points on driving licences. There will be an appeal provision at all stages in the process, and as it indicates, reaching a points limit does not result in automatic action, but it's a trigger for review of conduct and a decision as to whether and what further action is necessary. And that further action may include a range of actions, including training, suspension, or potentially revocation, but it could be any form of action as a result, or in some cases, possibly no action.
Phone's off again.
Oh.
You want to borrow mine?
Oh, it's back on, it's come back on.
It's a timer, so turn it off.
And then, yeah, right, okay, great stuff. Just to clarify, requirements of the statutory guidance, which indicate that when formulating a taxi and private hire policy, the primary and overriding objective is the protection of the public, and the importance of ensuring that the licensing regime protects the vulnerable, and this cannot be overestimated. The statutory guidance makes a number of recommendations, and I won't read through each of those, but there's a duty to ensure that the drivers are fit and proper persons, and it may be helpful to pose the following question. Would you allow any person for whom you care, regardless of their condition, to travel alone in a vehicle driven by this person at any time of day and night? And that factor must be considered in terms of the decision as to whether somebody is a fit and proper person. In terms of the implementation, it is proposed that there is a lead-in period for the changes in the new policy. It is recognised that many aspects can't come in immediately. There's got to be time to make, for example, to make changes to signage, to undertake required training, and as indicated on previously in respect to the points in Appendix C, that there will be some element of grandfather rights, or propose that there is some element of grandfather rights in respect of existing vehicles and those carrying forward. And guidance and support will be provided to drivers, operators and proprietors as regards to exactly what is required at what stage. It will be a case of working together to reach a suitable agreement as regards to what action is required when. Now, having considered the consultation responses, I understand that members are proposing a number of amendments to clarify some points within the policy, and I will hand over in a minute back to Councillor Warren in a moment on this, but would reiterate that the purpose of the policy is not designed or intended to be punitive towards hackney carriage and private hire drivers, operators or proprietors. The objective is to maintain and improve safety for all across West Northamptonshire and to provide the best service for the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I open it to members? Do you have any questions of the licensing officer? Sally.
Thank you, Chair. Just thank you that we've been given this extra time to consider, and it has been considered well. I think that from the evidence that was put in front of us tonight, I think people are happier that we've had a chance to review it and come back with things. But there's a couple of points I wanted to raise, but I didn't know whether to raise them now, as regards if
it's anything to do with the amendments, we'll do that in just a second.
We can do that, okay. The only other point I would make is that to pick up a passenger that might be inebriated to the point that they might be sick, if you get a passenger in your car and they're sick, then you can't use your car again for the rest of the night, and you've got to go and clear it up. And to be honest with you, I don't think that that's fair on any taxi driver or private hire. So I think it is down to the individual to say no, because that is a problem for them if they have to take their car out of business. So I think it's down to the discretion of the driver for that bit.
Thank you, Sally.
Do you want me to answer?
Yes, please.
No, we do have soiling charges that can be charged, so we do set that within our fees and structures within the tariffs, etc. So there is a fees and charges that we can do for that. Okay.
Does he get the money back?
I don't know, that probably gets taken up. That's not something that we can necessarily actively get involved in. So yeah, that is potentially an issue.
Paul.
That soilage charge, does that include loss of earnings? Because surely if someone's sick in your car, there'd be smell, wouldn't there? And I'm sure that vehicle couldn't be used.
It's something historically that's been looked upon as being allowing for X amount of hours that a person may have to take their vehicle off the road and how much it might be. But that's something going forward, as we say, to keep under review if there's anything that we can help, that we can do in terms of that. But yeah, that is an issue. But that may be a reason why they don't necessarily want to take passengers if they are going to be sick. Yeah.
Hopefully this won't cut out. So in terms of the amendments, can I propose them and add a bit of commentary to the document?
Yeah, as soon as the the questions of the officers are finished.
Okay. So I thought it had.
We'll open it up to. So does anybody else have any questions of the officer on the presentation that they've given tonight so far?
Can I just ask one
Yes.
question? Yeah, you were saying that you're going to give people time to make certain amendments. Have you looked at what those timescales might be? You know, are they going to be reasonable?
Yeah, each of the different, there will be different parts of the, and we have already discussed this with some of the trade, there will be different parts that we'll allow. So, for example, depending on how the committee vote, we will have to do a procurement exercise for the garage, to procure the garages. So that may take 6 months. We did initially suggest a timescale, but obviously things have moved on. So in our first report, we did suggest that. What we have done and undertaken is that we will try and communicate ASAP to the trade those different factors. A signage, I know originally back in October we talked about 3 months to allow for the change in signage. That might be that we discussed with the trade, and we will work very quickly on this over the next few weeks. Signage to the trade may be that when they come to renew their vehicle, that's a suitable point that we do it, because at the moment some of the proprietors who take their vehicles to the garages will get the signage checked at the point that they're renewing. So that might be seen as the opportune moment. Some will move to it voluntarily because we know some of our operators already have one way of signage in one council area, sovereign area, and another type of signage. So they already know and have the setup. But obviously we need to work maybe with other operators that are not familiar with that. So we will work on all these things. Yeah, that's our aim.
Any other questions? Okay, well, we'll move on to the amendments. Gareth.
Thanks, Chair. So the committee have got in front of you a list, well, most of us have. We share mine with a number of amendments. What I want to do is just talk through really where they've come from, and hopefully it'll make a bit of sense. So I'll go through. The first amendment is on page 9, part of the introduction, paragraph 2.9. Ruth has just said it, but it wasn't stated in the document about the purpose of it not being designed to be punitive to the trade. So we've incorporated that. Paragraph 2.4 on page 9. This policy will be kept under constant review. And I'm proposing these amendments with a couple of caveats. The first one being that this policy, if it's approved this evening, be on the agenda for every committee moving forward, and that representatives of the trade have the opportunity to come and speak to the committee to address any concerns with it in its implementation. So it's approved this evening. We'll never hear from anyone again, and we'll never have an opportunity to consider it again. It's a live document, which is its purpose, but there is a platform for the trade on an ongoing basis to make commentary about its implementation and any concerns. Page 13, about the policy objectives and aims. Again, it's just to reiterate that the purpose of the policy is not to be punitive. Coming on to page 30, what I thought was probably the most contentious thing from the last meeting around the penalty point system, on paragraph 1.2, again to state it's not intended to be punitive to the trade. Paragraph 1.6, if a licensee wishes to challenge the imposition of any penalty points, it just reiterates there is a right of appeal. And having sat on licensing committees, obviously on the Borough Council previously and on West Northants, I will actually say, whilst I understand no one likes change, and you look at the penalty points and it's a bit scary, I'll come on to why I think I'm proposing to make it fairer in a minute. But at least with this proposed policy, it's actually an upgrade on the Northampton Borough policy, and I'll tell you why. Because in Northampton Borough, if a driver received a letter of warning from an officer, the first time there would be an opportunity for that warning to be challenged, it's when they're in front of a subcommittee with their licence under review. With this approach, there is an appeal at every step. So if a driver gets a warning for, I won't pick a particular indiscretion out of the multitude of which they're in there, but there is an opportunity and a path towards natural justice if you feel that imposition is unfair. There is a right to come before a subcommittee of councillors at every step. So I actually think it's an upgrade on where we were in Northampton Borough. Paragraph 1.8, again on page 31, talking about the 12-month rolling period, again just re-emphasising there is a right of an appeal. On page 60 of the original draft, it wasn't stated in the, weirdly, it wasn't stated in the penalty points section. There's a reference to a maximum number of points that a driver could accrue. I believe the original, I'm going to have to find it just to make sure I'm right. So on page 60, the original wording said, the council will also run its own penalty point system as a method of enforcing. A maximum of 20 penalty points can be accrued on a licence. There's no end date. There's no cut-off point for that. So I'm proposing to introduce on page 31 an additional paragraph 1.9, which states a maximum of 24 council penalty points can be accrued on a licence any rolling 3-year period. So it isn't for a lifetime. If you accrue 20 points in 10 years, you have your licence reviewed. It's a rolling 3-year period, which hopefully will make, if agreed, will hopefully make the new policy fairer. The next one on page 36 is actually one of the list of breaches, which was a typo in the original draft around private hire drivers applying for hire. The original version said 4 points, which put it on parity with vaping in a car. I'm sure I'd like to think we'd all agree that applying for hire is more serious than that. I'm not saying that that's okay, but the original version was meant to say 9 points, so I've amended that. On page 50, talking about paragraph 4.39, 4.40, minor traffic incidents, a major traffic incidents. Again, just to reiterate the right of an appeal around that. On page 58, the original draft made a distinction between UK nationals and foreign nationals when it came to DBS checks. I didn't think that was particularly helpful, so I've made that into one paragraph around DBS checks for travel of 6 months, not 3 months, and also again reiterated that there is a right of an appeal for that. I'm reassured, Chair, that in regard to the certificate of good conduct, if a driver, because obviously this is a retrospective proposal, so we could have drivers, as I'm sure we have in the room this evening, that have been driving without issue, fit and proper people for a long time. If efforts are made to try and obtain the certificate of good conduct and it's not received through no fault of their own, I'm reassured that that will be viewed sympathetically by a subcommittee. So I'm hopeful that no one will lose their livelihood as a result of let's say an embassy not responding or whatever. Page 60 around the penalty point system is now reflective of the earlier paragraph, and then on page 139, certificate of good conduct, again it reflects the same, which I've just spoke about. So that are the amendments. I'm sure they're not exhaustive. There may well be some others. The second caveat, why I'm proposing these amendments, in addition to the constant review of the document, I think we'd all agree that. Sorry. Am I back? Yeah. Okay. The second caveat I would make, in addition to the constant review, I'm sure we'd all agree, for those of us that were at the last meeting, it was somewhat of a spiky affair. And I think it's fair commentary to say, since 2011, you know, I've been constantly on licensing. I've never seen what I witnessed on that evening anyway. It looked like a fairly, like a bad marriage between the authority and the trade. And I think the reintroduction, I'm not saying we're copying everything we did in Northampton Borough, by the way, it's not about that. But in Northampton Borough, we did have, I think may have been quarterly meetings with the chair, the vice chair, and representatives of the trade. I would like to insist that those be reintroduced to try and, let's say, rebuild working relations, but also that'd be an opportunity for any issues to be dealt with as we go along, and perhaps in a more informal setting initially, and then, as I said earlier, if this is on the agenda moving forward, then members of the trade have got the opportunity to raise them with us. So, happy to propose.
Thank you, Gareth. on a second, Sally.
That's all right.
Yeah, on your last point on the quarterly meetings, I've had notification today that officers have agreed with members of the trade that will go ahead, and I will ask that possibly myself and Vice Chair can be invited to those meetings as and when is necessary. So that is going ahead as far as I understand. Okay. Okay, I'll open it up to the floor now, whether there's any other amendments or any conversation concerning Gareth's amendments. Sally.
Thank you. I totally agree with Councillor Gareth Evans' amendments. I think they're very sensible. I'm very pleased to see that there is the 6 months rule being brought in rather than 3 months when people go on holiday. And it's from anywhere in the world. It's from Iceland, it's from America, it's from everywhere. It's not, just certain countries, it's across the globe. So that's one of the things I've spoke about last time. I think a lot of these members are quite sensible, but I also think the communication had broken down a little bit, and I'm glad that we're going to resume the quarterly meetings, because I think that's what people want, and also it'll give us a chance to review the policy as it's being placed. So I second all the amendments, and hopefully we can set off the new year with a renewed partnership with the taxi and private hire companies.
Thank you, Sally. And anybody else wish to make a comment? Alan.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a query, and it may sound very naive, but I believe that I was recently told in a training event that whatever our policy says, we are not bound by it when we make a decision at subcommittee. Can I have clarification that that is in fact the case, please?
Yeah, that is correct. Anybody else wish to make any comments? No? Okay. I'd like to move to propose that we accept Gareth's amendments. Could I have a proposer, please? Oh, sorry, Gareth proposed it.
And I seconded it. I seconded it.
Yep. Thank you, Sally.
Yeah.
Thank you. So can we take a vote, please? Unanimous. Thank you very much. That's passed. Do we move on to item 7?
Microphones off, sir.
Sorry. Item 7, urgent business. Do we have any urgent business?
No,
Yes, Gareth.
So it's a point procedure. So we've agreed to adopt we voted on the amendments. Do we now need to vote for them? Now it's a substantive policy.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. So we need to do it all again. But but those will be included in that, and now we've got to vote on it again.
Yes.
Yeah,
So you want to propose the amendments in the policy?
Happy to propose the amended policy.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Gareth. Appreciate that.
I'll second it.
So,
Now we have to vote on it.
No, you need to vote on the amended policy.
yeah, right. Okay. We now need to vote on the amended policy. All agreed?
Yeah. Should be unanimous.
Okay. Is that, against or abstain? Against. Okay, thank you. Okay, that's passed. Thank you. Item 7, urgent business. No? Okay, thank you very much for attending tonight. Call an end to the meeting. Thank you.